it's your Sangoku boy Tante here, and today we have the Samsung Galaxy A20s, or what is the box of the A20s, because this is the A20s. It's a medyo mid-range offering from Samsung, joining the Realme 5, Redmi Note 8, and the Oppo A5 2020. This was released last year in September with its 1-year anniversary in the works, and with the newly released A21s, we're going to see if the A20s is still worth to buy in 2020. So without further ado, join me on this segment of the Galaxy A20s review. We're going to show you all the features of the A20s. If you want more videos like this one, feel free to subscribe and hit the like button to see more of my videos in action.
So let's get started.
So the Galaxy A20s. First off, let's start off with the design, because that's one of the main key features of this phone. Design. A20s, a bit generic, both front and back. Here's why. This is the front of the Realme 5, Redmi Note 8, and the Oppo A5. This is the front of the A21 or the A20s. And as you can see, they're exactly all the same. They're not that indistinguishable. Of course, that's what we expect from smartphones in the year 2019 or even in the early 2020s.
Needless to say, the back panel is also generic thanks to the fact that it looks like any 2019 Samsung phone. And also because the phone is made out of plastic or glastic as Samsung calls it, which doesn't add or minimize any premium feel of the phone and actually makes the phone more premium than it is. Of course, the thing to keep in mind in plastic phones is that it's very prone to scratches and fingerprints as shown in my example. And of course, being a black phone, which doesn't add any flair to the device except for the fact that it spurts some kind of blue light when hit in bright light, the black color is very bland. So if you want one in your neck of the woods, be sure to check the emerald green one. That thing is a stunner and absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Anyway, while we're on the back panel, we can discuss about the triple camera array setup, which is a departure from the A20's dual setup consisting of a 13 megapixel main, a 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. Front and center is the Samsung logo, and above that is your fingerprint scanner in this black ring.
Speaking of the fingerprint sensor, it's pretty fast. As soon as you put your finger on the sensor, it senses it automatically.
However, I was not impressed, as phones with a fraction the price like this Oppo A5s seems to have a more delicate and precise fingerprint scanner for a fraction the price.
The verdict, A20s is generic overall, but definitely what you expect a modern day smartphone to be. Display. A20s, 6.5-inch TFT LCD display, 720 by 1560 resolution, 264 pixels per inch.
Now, while a 720p panel is pretty low resolution by today's standards, that was the same resolution as the previous generation A20, but the A20 used a Super AMOLED screen, while this thing uses TFT LCD technology, which is pretty much inferior compared to the Super AMOLEDs, but this thing is no slouch, competing against the IPS technology of phones that cost way more than this. And so far, this is one of the best LCD displays I've ever come across, especially from a 720p panel with excellent viewing angles, excellent off-axis viewing, especially in bright light. Of course, when you get it into automatic mode, of course it gets a lot brighter. Of course, the colors are very accurate, very sharp color reproduction, and typically one of the best LCD displays out there, and I'm very happy so far.
So verdict, A20s, a pretty solid LCD panel. A bit of disappointment na hindi siya AMOLED, but then again, it's a pretty solid display from the best manufactured displays. We're down to software and performance, but we're gonna get to software later, and we're gonna focus on the performance. The A20s, Snapdragon 450, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs internal, expandable via micro SD.
We are going to get to the specifics later, but for now what I can tell you, the chipset in the A20s is more than enough for day-to-day usage, and paired with 4 GB of RAM, this phone has a lot of breathing room for any multitasking, and paired with Samsung's One UI, you will have absolutely no problems in these things. Of course, when it comes to gaming, this phone can satisfy all your gaming needs thanks to its power-efficient Snapdragon processor. This phone absolutely dominates all kinds of games. Whatever you can think of, this can play like Call of Duty or Mobile Legends. Mobile Legends, of course, is a very high performance demanding game, and I had no problems whatsoever, and even though it's a lower tier chipset, it does the job pretty well.
Here's where things get pretty interesting. As I mentioned, Snapdragon 450. This is priced at 10,000 Philippine pesos when it was new, and of course now. For that same amount, I could get a Realme 5, a Redmi Note 8, and an A5 2020 with a 665 Snapdragon chipset, which is way beyond the chipset in this thing.
And whereas the 450 was 3 years old, the 665 was only released last year, and so is this phone. And whereas the 665 is a mid-range chipset, the 450 is only used in the lower end spectrum of smartphone. Of course, this obviously translates into significantly lower Geekbench scores than its competitors. So an entry-level chipset in a mid-range phone is pretty bad. But like what I said, it is down to real-world usage, and this phone is no slouch because any task you can give it, it does the job pretty well. And paired with 4 gigs of RAM and Samsung's own One UI, which is one of the best intuitive and by far one of the best user interfaces out there, you will have absolutely no problem in this thing. With Samsung's superior customizability, there is obviously nothing this phone can't do. One thing I did notice about this phone is that it gets pretty loud. But the weird thing is when you get past the mid-tones, it starts to lose clarity, so it's better to keep it under the mid-tone. The A20s is powered by a 4000 mAh battery and can charge your phone from 0 to 100 in less than 2 hours, and battery life is exceptional with more than 10 hours, and it supports fast charging out of the box. Next up, we have the camera, which is this phone's main selling point. Now we have a triple camera array setup that consists of a 30 megapixel main, a 5 megapixel depth sensor, and an 8 megapixel ultra wide with 120 wide angle lens. Of course, in the camera department, this thing very much excels. For one thing, the user interface is very much straightforward with lots of options for your photography needs, such as switching to your wide angle lens, pro mode, panorama, live focus, as well as some beauty options. Of course, it does take very stellar images with very nice color reproductions, sharp and vivid images. It isn't perfect, however, it tends to overexpose, but that can be fixed. But in bright light, this thing absolutely takes killer photos, especially on the wide angle lens. Where this thing falls apart, however, is in low light, where it takes pictures with no dynamic range and is not so very color accurate, especially on the wide angle lens. And those are the only problems I saw, because the front camera is also nice in bright light. And in low light photography, of course, it's not that good. Of course, video recording is as stellar as it is on photography, with one of the best full HD recording on any phone to date, with very color accuracy, though it is a bit shaky, but that's all I can say because videos come out very nice in detail, good contrast, but when switching to the wide angle lens, of course, it loses some resolution and is not equally as good as the main camera.
So mga katoda, the verdict. What do we know so far? We know that this is one of the worst phones out there, and one of the worst mid-rangers of all time. The camera is pretty garbage, as well as the display. The display could have gone better, even though it's large. What are the good things? We have a large display, a large battery, good battery life, or great battery life depending on your usage. A fingerprint scanner with face unlock, and just all the features you'd expect from a 2019 mid-range phone. Just not the best, qualities that a mid-range phone should have, but all the features you need. For those who are looking for a good phone, this is one phone to get. Anyway, mga katoda, leave a comment down below if you agree with me or disagree with me. I don't really care, but this phone is pretty bad. That's all I can say. I'll see you guys there in the next video. There will be more of this, I can assure you of that. And I'll see you guys again in the next video. So this is San Goku Tante, which is the last time you'll ever see me.